Hello, Miss Nancy here in the Children's Corner of the Dowling Library. Another one of our Irish children's authors that I want to talk about is C.S. Lewis. C.S. stands for Clive Staples Lewis, and he was born in Belfast in Northern Ireland. What I found interesting here was the day that he died, 22nd November 1963, was also the day that another Irishman died, one that we know from our country, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So I wanted to point that out as a little coincidence. And C.S. Lewis was also a friend of J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the Lord of the Rings series. Tolkien wasn't Irish, but the two of them did have a friendship and were connected in the literary world. C.S. Lewis did write the book that I'm going to read to you, The Tales of Narnia. And this one, there's a number of Tales of Narnia, but this one is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Some of you might know it from different TV shows or movies, but we're going to read the book today. And as usual, I am going to hold the book in front of me to read and up then at the end so you can see it. Once there was, and probably still is, a magic wardrobe. It was made from the wood of a magic apple tree, and you could, if you would, climb through the back to another world, to a magical land called Narnia. But now that world was ruled by an icy white witch whose wand could turn you to stone and whose power could be broken only with the help of 4 children. And of course, right here in this side of the wardrobe were 4 children: Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, all of them longing for an adventure. Lucy, the youngest and the most longing, was the first to push past the furry coats. So for those of you that don't know, wardrobe is what they used to hang their clothes in before closets were made in houses. She found herself in a snowy wood under a street lamp where the witch's wickedness had made it always winter. Always winter and never Christmas. Imagine that, came a voice. It was Mr. Tumnus, a faun. He was working for the witch, even though he knew it was wrong. Good evening, he said, staring hard at Lucy. You are a human child, are you not? Come through the Wild West woods. No, said Lucy, through the wardrobe in the spare room. Wardrobe? Spare ohm? Never heard of them, said Tumnus. But someone like you is expected, and a toasty tea awaits. After tea, to Lucy's surprise, Mr. Tumnus began to sweep so hard that there were weep so hard that there were puddles all over the floor. Lucy had often wanted to cry like that herself and was most sympathetic, which made Mr. Tumnus blurt out the truth. I'm supposed to hand you over to her wicked white majesty, but now that I've met you, I can't, I won't, even though I'll be turned to stone if I don't. Lucy promised she wouldn't let that happen. After all, she said, a witch is only a witch until someone stands up to her in the right way. So I'll get my brothers and sister, and that's what we'll do. But before Lucy could persuade Peter and Susan that there was a wicked white witch, through the wardrobe Edmund secretly slipped to see for himself. And bumped straight into her. At once, the witch saw that he was just the kind of boy she could win over with a box of her enchanted Turkish delight. And there will be lots more, rooms full of it, she tempted him, if only you'll bring your brother and sisters to my house. I will, said Edmund, stuffing and gobbling without stopping to think what might happen to them if he did. Then I'll make you a king. That beautiful, wicked witch smiled. So when a few days later, all four of the children did go through the wardrobe together, Edmund was quite ready to deliver the others to the witch, just to get his mouth around more of that magic must-have Turkish delight. Of course he said nothing as they trudged through the snow in coats borrowed from the wardrobe. He said nothing when they found Mr. Tumnus's cave ransacked. He said not a word when a talking beaver told him Mr. Tumnus had been dragged away by the witch's secret wolf police. Lucy, on the other hand, was furious. "Well, that does it," she cried. "I'm not leaving until that witch has had her wand smashed and her wickedness stamped on." Mr. Beaver was thrilled to hear Lucy talk like this and hurried them back to his house for a what to do about the witch meeting. "You have come at exactly the right time," said Mrs. Beaver. "You have indeed," said Mr. Beaver, "for it is well known that to get rid of the witch, Aslan needs 4 brave and adventurous children." "Aslan?" cried Lucy with a shiver of excitement. "Who's Aslan?" "Aslan the Great, of course," said Mr. Beaver, "who created this world and all of us in it. The only one more powerful than the witch." "And," Mrs. Beaver gathered them closer, "they say that he will be at the stone table by tomorrow. But shh, the witch mustn't hear of it, and her spies are everywhere." They were soon busy whispering about meeting Aslan that they didn't notice Edmund sneaking out the back. To make his way to the witch's house and more Turkish delight. But nothing could have prepared him for what he found when he got there. Every kind of creature turned to stone, air so cold it frosted white. The witch's wolf captain stretched out, smirking, and the witch in the foulest mood, hating him on sight. "Where are your sisters and brother?" she snapped, her breath forming icicles. "I'll get them to you," Edmund managed to say through the chattering teeth. "Right now, they're going to the stone to meet some Aslan? I knew it. No wonder the temperature is rising in here. Longbeard, my sleigh. Aslan and those children must not reach each other." But keeping to hidden paths in the deep forest, the beavers were already leading Lucy, Peter, and Susan to meet Aslan. "Sleigh bells!" cried Lucy suddenly. "Quick, hide! It must be her." "No, look," said Mrs. Beaver. "It must be a sign from Aslan." Lucy looked and her heart leapt. Father Christmas was here. He was not like any Father Christmas she had ever seen or heard of, nor were his gifts. "I'll bring you what your adventure calls for," he said mysteriously. Lucy held hers carefully. It was a small diamond bottle of cordial made from fire flowers, so magical that a few drops would heal the wounded. At the thought of the wounded, Lucy remembered Edmund, and she had a feeling that something terrible was happening to him. And it was. The witch had tied him like a prisoner and was raging at him as if it was his fault her winter was wearing out. Her sledge wasn't working, and that everywhere there were signs of spring. But deep down she knew it was Aslan's doing. She knew the prophecy. The day Aslan crowns 4 children kings and queens of Narnia, my rule will end. "Except it won't," she snarled at the lurking wolf captain. "I'll defeat him yet. Go get the other 3 while I decide best how to use this fool of a boy." But defeating Aslan would never be that simple, not even for the White Witch. As Lucy and Peter and Susan were discovering the table, Aslan, nobler than any other creature imaginable, arrived. He was a lion, greater than all lions, and wonderful and terrible at the same time. For Lucy, looking at him felt like looking at the sun, only safer. When Aslan spoke, his deep, rich voice seemed to shake the very ground Lucy stood on. "Welcome, children. Long have we waited for you." He turned to the horizon. "There, in that castle, are 4 thrones. Only when 4 human children occupy them will Narnia be free again. But the crowns must be earned, and that time is upon you." At this there was a great concern amongst the smaller Narnians. Peter and the beavers ran to see what it was all about, but Lucy felt she had to tell Aslan about Edmund. "He is lost, Aslan," she began, and then the words tumbled out. "Or with the witch, or taken by the witch, or something, but please, he is our brother. He is the 4th. He must be saved." "All shall be done that must be," said Aslan, "and dealt with in turn and first." He was interrupted by the sound of the horn Father Christmas had given Susan. She was giving a warning that the witch's wolf captain was slinking toward them. Lucy was up a tree in a flash, but Susan hadn't time to climb out of reach. "Help her," Lucy cried. And drawing his sword, Peter did, fighting that lurking, smirking, cruel wolf captain single-handedly to his end. "You are finding your strengths, I see," Aslan glowed, "and now I must send my people for your brother." True to Aslan's promise, in the morning Edmund had been found. He was there, walking in the dewy grass and talking with the lion. Lucy thought her brother looked quite different, as if he was beginning to trust himself again. She was so relieved she wanted to run over and throw her arms around him, but before she could, the dwarf, Longbeard, announced the arrival of the White Witch. "Hear me," the witch screamed at Aslan. "That child was ready to hand over his brothers and sisters in exchange for a few boxes of Turkish delight. He is a traitor and cannot be rescued. For the law says all traitors are mine. Give him back to me now." When she finished, Aslan sent Peter to prepare an army of good Narnians. Then he quietly offered his own life to save Edmund's. Oops. The witch couldn't believe her luck. "Forget Edmund," she whispered to her dwarf and their hags. "Forget the children. Now I can kill the great Aslan, power of all good, without breath or roar or rule forevermore. Tie him to the table with 1,000 ropes." But as soon as Aslan was dead, the witch left, and the army of mice arrived and began to nibble through the ropes. Lucy and Susan, who had been hidden, were heartbroken. They wanted to run and tell Peter, but before they could, there was a thunderous crack. The stone table had split in 2, and Aslan was free. "Aslan, you're alive," Lucy cried, flinging herself onto him. "How did you do that?" "Through magic deeper than the witch will ever know," said Aslan. "And now, children, there is so much to do. But first, we shall enjoy a romp through spring as no one ever has except in Narnia." And that is what they did, the girls riding on the great lion's back, through avenues and sunny glades, past roaring waterfalls and echoing caverns, across mountains, valleys, and acres of blue flowers. and on until they arrived at the witch's house. She was away, of course, but the high walls and locked gates did not bother Aslan. "Hold on," he roared, and leaped and landed in the courtyard among statues of the creatures that the witch had turned to stone. "Mr. Tumnus," cried Lucy. "Oh, Aslan, I promised him I wouldn't let this happen." "Then keep your promise through me," said Aslan, and he began to breathe warm life into each of those cold stones. And, once back in the land of the living, all of them were only too eager to join the battle against the witch. And her horrible army of ogres, giants, boggles, hags, ghouls, and ghastlies of every sort. But as they came bounding up, they saw the stone statues of their side and all over the battlefield. The witch and the wand were winning. Then suddenly, Edmund stepped out to save the day. Instead of going for the witch directly, he brought his sword down on her wand and smashed it to pieces. "Fools, all of you," the witch screeched and turned on Peter. "I'll still find a way." Peter staggered back, and Aslan made his greatest leap yet, straight at the witch. And that was that. The White Witch was dead. Narnia was free. Long live Narnia! The cries went up, sending the last of the witch's army running for the faraway hills. As Edmund lay still on the ground, Lucy remembered her fireflower cordial and rushed to his side. "He's badly wounded," said Peter, "but without what he did, the witch would have won." "True," said Aslan. "Even I might be a statue. He has earned his place back among you. But Lucy, be quick. There are many wounded. Susan, help her while I get busy with all these statues." And every hurt Narnian was healed, and every stone statue was breathing again. Aslan solemnly crowned the children up at their castle: King Peter, Queen Susan, King Edmund, and Queen Lucy. Afterward there was music and feasting and dancing. Aslan, glowing more golden than ever, was about to slip away, but before he did, Lucy found him. "We've never ruled anywhere before," she said, and I'm a bit afraid." "Don't be," said Aslan, "for I'll be with you, even though you do not see me. Besides, you're all brave and adventurous, and I've seen the love in your heart, Lucy, and it overflows. You will be as good a queen as Narnia could hope for." As always, Aslan was right. Soon the four of them were loved and respected up and down the land. Together they finished off the witch's ghastlies. They restored peace, good living, and laughter. And where once it was endless winter, now it seemed always summer. "The prophecy is filled," said Mr. Tumnus as they walked back through the wild woods. "Narnia is Narnia again. But what's this? An iron tree lit like a lamp?" And of course it wasn't an iron tree at all. It was the lamp post near the wardrobe. Suddenly, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy felt the pull of their lives on the other side, and the next thing they were not pushing past trees, but rows of fur coats. They were back, they were home, and to their amazement, not a moment had passed since they had left. But then, as they were to find out in many other adventures, that was all a part of the marvel and mystery of the ever more magical land, Narnia. Now, before I sign off, I wanted to let everybody know that there are coloring pages in the Dowling Library of some of the characters that we have just read about in Narnia. There's Lucy and there's Aslan. So after you listen to this, If you want to come by and get some coloring pages, come on over. We'd love to see you. Until next time.